Okay, everybody. This is the dreaded oil problem for all Chevy Equinoxes between 2010 and I believe 2015, 2016, something like that. So I have a police edition of this because, well, yeah, work. I won't disclose what I do. Long story short, mine's a little more customized than the average. Yeah, cold air and everything. So, if you're getting an oil leak on the front right side of your engine, it's going to be down there. Atypically, up under your alternator, there's a tension rod that you need to lift up to take your belt off. And I mean, it must be off. It's a good time to change your belt if you're thinking about it. I use an 13/16 very large socket wrench in order to remove this. Now, how I found it was I sprayed a couple bottles worth of degreaser up in here. Obviously, it stripped quite a bit because I have my undercarriage Cerakoted. Noticed that the only leaking was coming around this thing, and it was shooting oil all over just this side of the engine. And it was just spray and pray, basically. So, I ran this up against this and jammed it in there in order to freeze the wheel in place, because it will turn. So I basically crammed something very sturdy, very steel in there. Was able to get it. That thing's about 6 inches. It's a coal pick. To get it to freeze in place, I was able to pull the bolt out. It's a real bitch to get out, undoubtedly. You want to make sure your seals are good for this, particularly a good old washer right there. So what it comes down to is this. This is what the cause of the oil leaks are. This is a new ring. This is about 15 bucks. It's a good one. It's not the cheap silicone crap. It's the metal. Or at least partially metal. I also bought a new one here. This is a new silicone. It does have a metal ring inside, as you can see, for fitting. I'm going to stick with the one that's been on it because it's lasted about 120,000 miles or so. As you can see, the wear on this is pretty gnarly. This is just some score marks where I used a flathead screwdriver to pop it out. It sits up behind this as you pull this out. You do not need a pull tool to get these out. This is unusually tight in here. You do want, if you have a pick, like so. I crammed it up under the edge here, and there was enough room to cram it up just enough to tap it with a tap hammer. And it slowly slid out. It was very little force. Then this ugly mug was sitting in this nice little ring right here. It's sitting down in there. So I crammed a flathead up under it and popped it out. Look in it carefully. This is your crankshaft. This is where your oil leak is coming from. Your crankshaft wheel, the harmonizer, will be covered in oil when you pull it out, unquestionably. And that's because it, well, requires oil to sit in there. That's your tensioner rod. You can use a long flathead screwdriver to push that up, or a steel bar. I used a steel bar. But I'm going to put the new ring in this. And once the new ring is in place, I'll put the serpentine back on. And the oil leak will be completely gone. I am knowingly checking the seals around the oil pan due to the oil burning issue. thus far, I have had the recall done on this vehicle, and it does not seem to phase it too much. It doesn't burn oil. I've just been losing a lot of oil. And I wasn't sure why I was losing oil until I decided to really explore this. As you can see, most of the undercarriage of my car is Cerakoted for corrosion. But the degreaser totally stripped it. But that's what this should look like, and it was pretty clean when I opened it up, even with the oil problems. A good can of degreaser and a power washer. Let it sit in the heat for about 20 or 30 minutes, maybe a couple hours with a fan on it if you want. Let it dry out good, that way you don't slip and hurt yourself like I did. You're going to want to remove this panel here. I actually flipped it up. I left one of the pins in and just flipped it up so that I didn't have to move it. But it's pretty simple. It's not a very hard thing to do. Like I said, I took this and crammed this piece right here, right under this lip, after freezing it in place. Pulled it out and just tapped it with a hammer very slowly, and it just came right out on its own. Very, very simple. It really doesn't take any torque at all. It's just a little tight. Getting it back in there is pretty easy. And you want to make sure you align it correctly with those two flat-ended parts for the crank. I guess it's the crank flywheel that's in there. Because this piece here, it does have two flat spots on it for that, very specifically. And make sure you check your rings. Ring looks good right here. So we'll just we'll probably Cerakote this, make it look pretty, keep it from eroding. I'll probably Cerakote it here in a minute, and we'll tack that sumbitch back on, and we'll be done. That's it. That's the oil pan. All the seals look real good after they fixed it the first time. This is obviously your plug. You do not need to remove your oil. You do not need to drain it. It is very sufficient to leave it in. There's no drainage whatsoever. That's it, guys. 2010 Chevy Equinox with a 2.4 Ecotec engine. It's good to have a light up under here because it gets dark as crap. Take care. I hope this video helps a bunch of you because it saved me about $1,500, man.